Rare's last Nintendo home console release before being acquired by Microsoft was Starfox Adventures. It released on the Nintendo GameCube in 2002. You play as Fox McCloud, who needs to restore Dinosaur Planet by recovering the Krazoa spirit, spellstones, and saving a mysterious fox girl named Crystal. This game really diverts from the normal Star Fox gameplay we were accustomed to. Most of the game is played on foot and is very similar to the Legend of Zelda series, but with thrown in Star Fox elements like short Arwing missions traveling to different areas on the broken up planet. But before the game got converted into what became Starfox Adventures, it was an original IP known simply as Dinosaur Planet. The original development of Dinosaur Planet began in 1997 after the release of Diddy Kong Racing. According to Kevin Bayliss, originally it was planned that Timber the Tiger from Diddy Kong Racing was to be the main character after he got pushed out as the main character in Diddy Kong Racing, being replaced by Diddy Kong himself. Bayliss went on to give us some original plot details by saying Timber was going to be a time traveler with a small dinosaur as a sidekick. If you really analyze the game on the surface, you can see some elements and similarities to Diddy Kong Racing. For example, an island with dinosaurs, primarily Triceratops, one of them even being named Tricky. High-speed racing sections downhill. It definitely fits in the Rare line of games on N64. But this game was a bit different, not being a typical 3D platformer, instead taking the previously mentioned action-adventure Zelda-style approach. And the character of Timber was slowly phased out for a wolf with a sword named Saber. And after a bit of development with the plot, another character by the name Crystal, each having their own respective animal companion, Kite and Tricky. The game development was really pushed in 1999 and a playable build was shown off at E3 2000. Not long after this 2000 build was shown, Shigeru Miyamoto looked at the main protagonist Saber and thought he looked like a certain fox, and suggested they rebrand this game into a Star Fox title. A lot of people take this as Rare was forced into changing the game entirely, but from what I found, it was more Rare was excited to convert it into a Nintendo IP like Star Fox. After the success of Star Fox 64, can you really blame them? The reason why Miyamoto suggested this game be made into Star Fox is because Takaya Imamura, the creator of Fox McCloud, begged Miyamoto to let him work on a Star Fox game again, and Miyamoto obliged, but wanted him to create an experience of Fox running on foot, rather than the traditional style Star Fox rail shooter gameplay. This was around the end of the N64's lifespan, and Miyamoto had a vision for Star Fox to come to the next Nintendo console. After seeing the build of Dinosaur Planet at E3, he joked about the Star Fox change, and well, he made it happen. Anyways, we all know how that story panned out and we got the GameCube release of Star Fox Adventures, but let's back up a little bit. A build just slightly later than the one shown at E3 2000, a build that was made for the original N64, was found and released online. The Twitter account Forest of Illusion is the one responsible for releasing the game online and stated they purchased a disc from a private game collector in Sweden, and this was what was on it. And actually this build was a bit in between Dinosaur Planet and Star Fox Adventures, showing Fox's model but with the original intent and story of the game present, the dialogue shifting between Saber and Fox throughout the game. Forest of Illusion said it would take some hacking to make the game fully playable to the end. Enter the fans. So many talented creators and devoted fans took this unfinished and glitchy game and have spent years and countless hours patching and repairing it, just so we can have the original build of Dinosaur Planet in a playable state. Dinomod Enhanced is the ROM version of the game that has been made playable all the way until the end. A dramatic amount of progress has been made updating this original leaked build, but this doesn't mean it's without glitches. To say everything this community has done for this game would probably be a several-hour video, but I just want to highlight some of the incredible things this team has accomplished. For one instance, they fixed broken textures. Level geometry and textures on models were often broken. These have steadily been restored and patched. Even amongst a previous build of the Dinomod version, you can see this ground displaying a broken textures pattern, and in the as of this video most current update, the ground texture has been restored. These sort of fixes are throughout the entirety of the game, and I imagine are one of the most taxing elements to fix. I know one thing that has been recently restored and being implemented in a future patch is Saber's Sharp Claw disguise. Previously, your model would swap to Fox. And speaking of that, Saber's model entirely had to be restored to a working state, as the leaked build has Fox implemented. The team has added a debug mode where you can swap to either model at any point. And speaking of the debug mode, you're met with several options in this menu to help navigate your experience, No Clip and Activate Cheats being the two most useful. No Clip enables you to essentially fly through level geometry, an unfortunately necessary feature sometimes, as the game functions with certain triggers that, if not progressed through properly, can cause you to be stuck and unable to progress. No Clip allows you to bypass walls, doors, and even NPCs to get to where you need to be next and hit the trigger. Cheats is mostly useful for one thing: magic. While in Starfox Adventures you had a magic meter, the game never really had many moments making you feel like you were in trouble without magic. Or if it did, magic would be easily accessible to recover. Having this cheat is almost a necessity, as some challenges and puzzles in the game require so much magic, it's nearly impossible to finish the task. Like the moment I needed to defend this Earthwalker from Skeetles. The debug menu itself also presents a few more tools, such as a warp function, but use this sparingly as it does screw up progression, and I can't advise you use it unless you absolutely are stuck. You also have an option to start a game as a specific character at any point. Again, this also messes with progression. Now, moving past the debug tool, cutscenes and widescreen support were also added. This game does support 16:9 widescreen, which is huge for an N64 title, and the community has also restored so many cutscenes within the game so you can truly appreciate it. This does happen to be a later N64 title, and as such, it's one of the best looking N64 titles on the system. You can truly appreciate the detail in the models and textures and the rich atmospheric world design that has a fully functional day and night cycle. This game is just plain beautiful, and restoring and offering the 16:9 support pushes it over the edge. Not to mention, every cutscene is filled with just absolute amazing animation. It looks so good. And finally, restoring gameplay functionality. This game is filled with a plethora of items, movesets, and puzzles. So many of these things were broken and unfinished. For example, on the earlier build, you couldn't use this log to traverse into a cave and the game would instantly crash. Later builds not only restored the functionality of the log and improved the model and animations, but also allowed access to the cave and progression past it. So many things like that needed to be repaired, and the community actively addresses reported bugs on their Discord server for future builds, so go check it out if you haven't. And like I said, we can sit here and highlight everything this community has done to restore the game, but this video would almost never end, so hopefully that's an adequate summary of some of the work, and it is very much appreciated. And now that we've highlighted some of the things the community did, I'd like to highlight how Dinosaur Planet differs from Starfox Adventures a little bit. Let's start with the plot. While there are several elements retained in Starfox, the story between these games couldn't be any more different. Looking at the pre-Starfox build in 2000, the actual plot of Dinosaur Planet is as follows. On the planet Animus, there were two tribes, the Vixen tribe of foxes and the Wolven tribe, seemingly at war with one another. The wizard Randorn, being a part of the Wolven tribe and Saber's father, had sent his eldest son, Saber's older brother, off to fight, and he died in battle. Grief-stricken and angry, Randorn invaded the Vixen camp, killing and destroying everything except for Crystal, who he took pity on and adopted. This makes Saber and Crystal adopted siblings. Feeling guilty, Randorn fled with Crystal into the wilderness to raise her, and abandoned his tribe and youngest son, Saber, who ended up becoming a royal knight of Animus and went searching for his father. Eventually, Saber finds Crystal, who has a similar necklace to his, and she tells him his father needs his help. Then the two travel to an ancient temple that houses a magical gateway to the land of Soria, where two tribes are on the brink of war, the Earthwalkers and the Cloud Runners. Each respective royal child was kidnapped. Kite, princess of the Cloud Runners, and Tricky, the prince of the Earthwalkers. Both tribes believing the other kidnapped the royals, but it was actually the Sharp Claw led by General Scales who wants to take over the world. He then uses the time Crystal and Saber are away to attack Warlock Mountain and take down Randorn, ending many Earthwalkers in the process and scattering Randor's spellbook across the world. General Scales started his conquest after taking over Dragon Rock, a holy site amongst dinosaurs, and discovering ancient technology and realizing he can harness the power of the spell stones. Dragon Rock is a holy site because it's where the Cimmerian dragon landed and met primordial dinosaurs and dubbed some of them the Guardians of the Spellstones and charged them with protecting them and the temples. The contact with the Cimmerian dragon also imbued these dinosaurs with its DNA somehow, and they acquired abilities like breathing fire and other dragon-like traits. The Cimmerian were an ancient race of dragons from another planet. To summarize, they were actually peaceful, but were at war with the Krazoa, who started an ancient great war to force others to follow and worship their god, the Konwledge. The Cimmerians banded with other races to fight the Krazoa. Drakor, the big bad of the game, was actually a Cimmerian scientist who was intending to revive the Cimmerian war dragon on Soria for his own purposes of reviving the old ways of his culture. But his plans changed when he realized the Krazoa were asleep and being awakened by Crystal and Saber. His goal now to stop the Krazoa and the connection to their god from being revived. Now that's kind of a lot of information. Shout out to Sunnyside on my Discord who helped me put all the pieces together. It's not perfect, but at least hopefully that's a decent enough summary that you get the picture of the plot. And for the record, I'm not saying Drakor is a good guy. According to some documents, he actually likes eating Thorntails, so, I mean, that's pretty bad guy stuff. I'm just saying they're all bad, basically. I guess in a way, the Krazoa god being evil in Starfox Adventures was an original intention. Just think of Andros as the Konwledge. So now let's talk about my experience with this game and all its mechanics in the recent builds. I happen to be one who downloaded the original ROM of Dinosaur Planet when it released online originally. I struggled to get through the first area on Warlock Mountain and the game chugged. I remember the level geometry being all screwed up. But this time, I started my playthrough with the 2023 Dynomod Enhanced version, which has been patched to be playable. And then after the first 6 hours, I transitioned into the latest 2025 patch. And holy crap. The first thing I noticed was the more steady and optimized frame rate. This game was much more playable. Textures that once were incomplete or broken are fixed. All the cinematics and cutscenes throughout the game made it feel like a premium experience. I played this game in 5 parts total. I had longer sessions where I could just keep progressing with no issues, and then I had sessions that lasted about half as long because I often reached a point where I got stuck, or at least I thought I was. The first part of my playthrough I reached a section with the log that constantly crashed when I entered this cave. This being patched in future versions, so patching to the latest version of Dynomod got me way past this cave. But the general gameplay wasn't without challenges. This wasn't a playthrough for the faint of heart. I constantly had crashes at random moments, and sometimes things just wouldn't work. Oftentimes the most frustrating thing to me was the AI for Kite in particular. While tricky at his moments, Kite I found would just go flying off into the distance, and when I needed her to do something like pull a switch, it took lots of trial and error to get through some of those segments. I would constantly be calling her, walking in different areas, calling her, just trying to get her close to where I needed her to go. And not to say it was all the time, but it was a noticeable and repeatable problem. Another problem I encountered was random triggers not triggering. I could walk into the Desert Force Point Temple and it simply would not load anything. I ended up having to use the no-clip tool and navigate down through all the temple and find the Spellstone pedestal, use it, and then no-clip out, which caused me to not have a specific cutscene that tells me to switch to Saber and pops up an obelisk in the desert that I would need to go to later. It was very frustrating, and I honestly thought I was stuck. But this sort of became a norm, and as I played more and more, I discovered that just because something didn't happen that was supposed to, didn't mean I couldn't progress. Oftentimes, I'd need to either clip past something or swap to the other character. Honestly, some parts of the game weren't even finished, and you just walk in and there's an item to collect, and that's it. I just had to get creative. And what's funny is, I realized I started having fun trying to figure out how I can play the game. It almost gave me a sense of how I used to look for glitches in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on GameCube. And all these trigger points and issues included items in the mix, since sometimes even major items like Spellstones wouldn't function as intended. But where there's a will, there's a way. But a game is more than just optimization and making sure all the mechanics work. The gameplay itself is actually pretty fun. I was actually very surprised at how different it was to Starfox Adventures. The combat may not be as flashy and epic looking, but I actually prefer its simplicity and straightforwardness over Adventures that really relied on you getting that one last strong hit from your combo. I also appreciated that Saber and Crystal's different weapon choices actually felt different. The sword was a bit faster but had a shorter range, while the staff was a bit slower but had more reach. The magic abilities and animal companion abilities mostly were the same as in Adventures, though I will say it took some time getting used to the C button layout for each specific mechanic. Left C was magic abilities, down C was animal companion abilities, and right C was items. I honestly prefer the Starfox Adventures style selection, but it wasn't bad by any means, I just had a preference. And on top of all these mechanical differences to Starfox Adventures, I will say the overall atmosphere and vibe of Dinosaur Planet is leagues above Star Fox. The world itself is vibrant and beautiful, but full of mystery. The game lures you in with mysterious creatures of unknown origin more than once. It's the kind of thing you want to watch lore videos about and uncover all the secrets. From the Krazoa to the Chimerian dragons to even just Crystal and Saber themselves, we learned so much more than we ever did in Starfox Adventures, which presented 3 of the 4 I just mentioned, replacing Saber with Fox. In a way, this game answers a lot of questions that Adventures never even attempted to. And I'm not bashing Adventures because I do love it, but there was something so special about Dinosaur Planet's vibe. You just need to play it and experience it. So all that being said, I really enjoyed my time with this game, and yes, for those who keep asking me, you can indeed get to the end of this game and get a credit screen. However, it is still an incomplete prototype build. It's come a long way from its release into the wild, but it still has a way to go. I'd suggest if you want to see what it's like, go check out my live tab and watch some of the streams I did on it. You can see it from start to finish if you really want. And if you want to try this game out, get locked into the Dinosaur Planet community. They have a Discord where you can get the latest patches and report bugs and things to them. It's important to grab the latest patch of the game, because the original Dynomod, while it's a fun experience, you can only get so far without getting super frustrated and unable to progress. I highly recommend getting the latest patch, and they're constantly updating it with so many cool new features. And if you want to just generally talk about Dinosaur Planet and other rare games, feel free to join my Discord as well. I'll drop both of them in the description below. But above all, be sure to drop a like in this video and subscribe if you haven't for more content like this. Until next time, have a good one.
Jiggy!